You don't deserve this promotion. I'm just better at playing the game. Those were her exact words, cold, dismissive, wrapped in that smug smile I'd learned to hate. My name is Jake. I'm 33. For 5 years, I gave my all to Halston and Company as a senior business analyst. Late nights, flawless pitches, clean audits. I was supposed to get the promotion to team lead until Rachel slid in and claimed my entire proposal as hers, the one I'd built from scratch. She beat me to the meeting by 10 minutes and presented my work like she'd bled for it. By the time I walked in, I was just the supporting guy. HR and management clapped her on the back and called it leadership. I just stood there, like a ghost in my own success. I remember shaking her hand afterward. She leaned in and whispered that line again. "You don't deserve this." That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at my bedroom ceiling and kept replaying it all. I wanted to explode. I wanted to fight. But then I remembered something. Rachel was smart but sloppy. She left footprints. She always did. And I already knew where the first one was buried. It started with a single email buried in a forwarded thread. That's when everything began to unravel. I opened the shared project folder that night. Something told me to start with the admin backups. Buried in an old email thread was my original proposal, time-stamped, formatted with my usual quirks. But what caught my attention was Rachel's reply. "Thanks, Jake. I'll tidy this up and submit for the Monday review." That was a week before she presented it to the executive board as her idea. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Why didn't I remember this? Because I trusted her. We'd worked side by side for 3 years. Late nights, office birthdays, casual chats about dreams and side hustles. I even helped her prep for her last presentation when she froze up. Now she'd stab me clean through and didn't flinch doing it. I downloaded the thread, exported the metadata, and backed it all up to an encrypted drive. Evidence wasn't enough. I needed timing. Rachel was on a fast track now, team lead with access to client data. If she cut corners or made a mistake, it would all fall back on her. But I didn't want to destroy her. Not yet. I wanted her to see me rise. I wanted her to look me in the eye the day I got the corner office she stole from me and know she handed it to me herself. So I stayed quiet. I kept smiling. But behind the scenes, I was building something better than revenge. I was building leverage. And when the next project cycle came around, I made sure Rachel's name was on every deliverable. But the cracks were already showing. 2 weeks later, a major client project came in, confidential, time-sensitive, and high stakes. The kind of project that made or broke careers. Rachel was handed the lead. I volunteered to assist. "Just here to support," I smiled. She nodded, slightly wary. But power makes people sloppy. She assumed I'd accepted my place. Perfect. I handled the data models, market analysis, and projections, just like before. But this time, I quietly tagged every document revision with unique version IDs linked to my system login. Nothing flashy, just invisible fingerprints. Every presentation draft? I saved backups before she touched them. Every email thread, BCC'd to a private archive, every meeting summary, time-stamped and voice recorded with legal backup, thanks to our company's internal documentation policy. She was still presenting my work, but I wasn't invisible anymore. And here's where it got interesting. Rachel started slipping. Little mistakes in the projections, oversold numbers, missed red flags. I pointed them out gently, like a team player. She brushed me off each time. One afternoon, I caught her in the break room, nervously pacing on the phone. I know, she whispered. "I'll make it work. Just don't say anything to them yet, okay?" Them. I started pulling internal financials. I needed to know who them was. And then I saw it, a discrepancy in the client projections she'd submitted. Numbers she never ran by me, data that didn't match what we'd built together. She wasn't just stealing credit anymore. She was gambling with the company's trust, and I was going to let her, just long enough to let the whole thing collapse, with her name on every slide. It was a Thursday when I met with Elaine from internal controls, casually, over coffee. Elaine and I weren't close, but she had a sharp eye and a strong dislike for numbers that don't add up. I simply mentioned a few inconsistencies I noticed in our client data, then shrugged and said, could be nothing. Elaine didn't think so. By the next morning, an internal audit was quietly approved for routine compliance. No alarms, no public flags, just quiet eyes on everything Rachel touched. Meanwhile, Rachel was glowing. She walked into meetings with that same confident stride, her heels echoing on the marble floor. She smiled bigger, dressed sharper, spoke faster. She thought she had the room in her palm. And to be fair, she almost did. What she didn't know was that I'd seeded every report with just enough breadcrumbs. Smart discrepancies, data trails only someone truly familiar with the numbers would catch. Enough to warrant scrutiny, but not enough to scream sabotage. The audit team started digging. Rachel kept submitting work that didn't align. She'd gotten used to bluffing numbers she didn't understand. Because before, I always covered for her. But this time, I let the cracks widen. I was polite, professional, supportive even. And when she asked, Jake, can you double-check this for me? I smiled and said, of course. I double-checked it, all right, straight into Elaine's inbox. Then came the day she was called into the boardroom and didn't come out for 47 minutes. She walked in smiling. Her blazer was pressed, her lipstick bold, like nothing could touch her. Rachel didn't know that every slide she'd submitted, every report she built this quarter, had been flagged. Quietly, precisely. I sat at my desk pretending to scroll through emails, but I was counting the minutes. 10, 20, 30. No sound from the boardroom. Just a closed door and a tension thick enough to taste. At minute 47, it opened. Rachel stepped out, pale, no smile. Her hands trembled as she clutched her tablet like a shield. She didn't look at anyone, just walked straight past me without a word. Elaine followed, papers in hand, and nodded once in my direction. No smile either, just confirmation. The very next day, the company launched a formal restructuring process on the client account. Rachel was still in her position, but she was no longer trusted. Everything she submitted now had to be reviewed by 2 managers. And guess who they looped in for oversight? Me. It was subtle, quiet punishment. But in a place like Halston and Company, silence is loud. Rachel shrunk, her confidence cracked, and every time she tried to pitch an idea, all eyes darted to me for verification. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, because I wasn't aiming for revenge anymore. I was building towards something better, and just 3 weeks later, the announcement came. Our director was retiring, and the shortlist for his replacement had only one surprising name. When the announcement hit Slack, everyone pretended to be surprised. Director Lucas is stepping down after 18 years of excellence, the message read. Candidates for succession will be reviewed internally. Nominations welcome. I was already on the list. It shocked Rachel. I could see it in her eyes when she walked past my desk that morning, coffee clutched tightly, her smile brittle. She knew I was no longer just the analyst. I was the guy whose reports got double-checked for accuracy and passed, quietly, reliably, consistently. HR invited me for a leadership discussion the next day. I didn't brag. I didn't tell anyone. I just prepped my portfolio, printed clean summaries, and brought every piece of tracked performance from the last 2 years, including the buried evidence she thought no one saw. Rachel wasn't ready for this level. I was. Rachel didn't go down quietly. She never would. She tried to pitch one final project directly to the executive board, a rushed proposal with glitter and noise. She booked the boardroom, sent calendar invites, titled it Strategic Innovation, Pitch Rachel D. No team, no consultation, no oversight, just her. But I knew something she didn't. Half the data she was about to present was pulled from my models, and they weren't final. I hadn't signed off. I hadn't even completed QA. I let her walk in anyway, and 15 minutes later, she walked out, alone. No applause, no nods, just silence and 2 directors with furrowed brows. Later that evening, I got a message on Teams. Jake, do you have a moment? I want to clear the air. Rachel, it was the first time she'd initiated contact in weeks. I agreed. We met in the office cafe. It was empty. Rain tapped the windows. She looked tired, smaller. I messed up, she said. I took advantage of your silence. I thought if I got ahead first, I'd earn it before anyone noticed. I listened. Not cold, not warm. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded once. I'm not here for apologies, Rachel. I'm here for the work. Then I stood up. She looked like she wanted to cry, but I was done carrying her weight. 2 days later, I got an email from HR. Subject: Offer, Director of Strategic Initiatives. I stared at it for a long time, not in disbelief, just quiet satisfaction. Attached was the formal letter, salary, perks, relocation assistance if needed. They had picked me, not because I fought for attention, not because I played politics, because I did the work, tracked the truth, and kept the receipts. I printed the letter, walked into my new office, and placed it on the desk. Then I sent one final group email, excited to step into this new chapter, looking forward to building with all of you. No drama, no gloating, just the facts. Monday morning, I walked into the boardroom, this time not as an analyst, not as an assistant, as the leader. Everyone stood a little straighter, even Rachel. She sat in the far corner, taking notes, her eyes never quite meeting mine. I outlined the new reporting structure, clear chains of accountability, transparent credit systems. I saw a few heads nod. People were listening. I looked at Rachel just once. She wasn't my enemy anymore. She was just a reminder of the game people play when they think no one's watching. I didn't need revenge. I had something better now. And just when I thought the storm had passed, a new email came in, this time from corporate legal. Someone had filed a complaint. It came in just before lunch, an email from corporate legal. Subject: Confidential, complaint notice, internal review required. My heart paused. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone filed it against Rachel. But no, it was addressed to me. Inside was a formal notice. A complaint had been filed alleging that I had tampered with internal data to sabotage a coworker's performance. I froze. This was serious. In our company, that kind of accusation didn't just go away. It triggered an investigation. HR, legal, and even compliance would be involved. My new role could be paused, or worse, revoked. There was no name on the file, anonymous submission. But I didn't need a name. I already knew who did it. Rachel had played her last card, and this time, she wasn't bluffing. I closed the email and sat back. I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. She couldn't beat me with performance, so she tried policy. But here's the thing. I didn't just protect my data. I documented everything, every version, every timestamp, every meeting summary, even the team's messages she deleted after the boardroom fallout. She underestimated one thing. I never played dirty. I played smart. That same afternoon, I made a quiet call to our compliance officer and scheduled a private walkthrough that would turn the whole case inside out. I met with Marta from compliance in a closed-door session. She was methodical, stern, the kind who looked through you instead of at you. I handed her a hard drive, a signed affidavit outlining my documentation trail, and a sealed envelope containing physical copies of my flagged reports and Rachel's unapproved alterations. She didn't say much at first, just flipped through each page, her eyes narrowing slightly when she reached the comparison charts. "This wasn't approved?" she asked. "No," I said. "It was submitted under my name, without clearance." "And these system logs, your login stamps line up with the original files?" "Down to the second." She nodded, expression unreadable. By the time I left the room, I knew I'd done everything right. But I also knew Rachel had gone too far. Filing a false complaint wasn't just office politics. It was career suicide if proven wrong. The wheels were now turning, not just inside our office, but higher up. And the best part, I didn't lift a finger to accuse her. I just proved my own innocence. Clean, quiet, ironclad. 3 days later, HR summoned both of us into separate meetings, and Rachel was about to learn what real consequences look like. I walked into HR with zero hesitation. They'd reviewed the logs, compared the reports, even interviewed the IT department about document access records. Everything pointed in one direction. Rachel had knowingly submitted doctored data then tried to frame me. Her motive, clear. Her mistake, assuming I wouldn't have receipts. After answering a few formal questions, I was told to wait. Then I saw her arrive, pale again, eyes darting. She barely looked at me. Her meeting lasted almost an hour. When she came out, her expression was hollow. She didn't speak. She just walked, fast, straight to the elevator. I didn't hear anything officially that day, but by morning her name was removed from the team board. Her Slack account was deactivated. Her office was empty, just like that. No announcement, no farewell email, just absence. That's how it ends when you try to play with fire you don't understand. She tried to climb a ladder she hadn't earned by stepping on the wrong person. And as I stood in my new office that afternoon, a knock on the door brought in something I never expected. Rachel's resignation letter, addressed to me. It was neatly folded, delivered by a junior HR rep who looked unsure whether to even hand it over. She said it was personal, he mumbled, placing the envelope on my desk. I waited until he left, then opened it. Inside was a simple note. You were always better than me. I just couldn't admit it. I hope one day you'll understand why I did what I did. No excuses, no threats, just regret. I sat back in my chair, thinking of the years we spent side by side, brainstorming after hours, building strategy decks, laughing over takeout. It didn't feel like victory. It felt necessary. Some people teach you what not to become. Rachel taught me to protect my work, my voice, and my values. Her chapter in my life was over, but the lesson stayed. I filed the letter away, quietly, and just as I prepared to move forward, my phone buzzed with a new meeting invite from the CEO herself. I double-checked the address twice. I'd never even spoken to her beyond elevator hellos. When I stepped into her office, she motioned for me to sit. No small talk. I've been following your progress, she said. What happened with Rachel was unfortunate, but how you handled it, that showed leadership. I nodded, unsure where this was going. She continued, we're looking at expanding into a new market. I need someone who's calm under pressure, who understands strategy and people. Then she smiled. I want you to build the new team. It hit me like a wave. This wasn't just a compliment. This was an offer, a blank canvas, a bigger seat at the table, and all because I chose patience over pettiness, strategy over shouting. I accepted with a firm handshake. But inside, I made a promise to myself. I'd lead without stepping on anyone, because I knew exactly how that felt. But I never expected whose name would appear on my transfer team roster, someone I thought I'd never see again. I sat down with the onboarding packet for the new strategic expansion team. There were 6 names listed. 5 were familiar, smart, reliable analysts I'd worked with before. But one name made me pause. Rachel Dyer. I blinked, checked again. No mistake. She had applied through an external recruitment channel. The expansion was under a different department. HR must have cleared her without linking our past. I leaned back, staring at her name. I hadn't seen or heard from her since she vanished from the main office months ago, and now she'd reappeared. On my team. I had every right to reject the placement. I could flag it, call HR, make noise. But I didn't. Instead, I requested a direct meeting with her before team assignments were finalized. The next morning, she walked into my office, older, quieter, and not the woman who once tried to erase me. She stepped in cautiously, clutching a notepad, eyes lowered. Thank you for seeing me, she said quietly. I didn't request you, I replied calmly. Your name just showed up. She nodded. I didn't know you'd be leading this unit. If I had, I wouldn't have applied. I studied her. No arrogance, no trace of the Rachel I once knew. I've been working freelance, she said. Contract gigs, nothing stable. I'm just trying to rebuild. I believed her. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the only question that mattered. If I let you on this team, will you work, really work, and never take what isn't yours? Her voice cracked. Yes, I just want a clean slate. And maybe I wanted that too. I signed the paperwork that evening, not because I owed her anything, but because letting go felt better than holding on. We launched the project 3 weeks later. Rachel was sharp, focused, efficient, and collaborative. She never challenged me, never overstepped. She gave credit freely, stayed late without being asked, admitted mistakes early, and the team noticed. People started trusting her slowly. I watched it happen like a strange replay in a different timeline. But I stayed alert. One wrong move, and she'd be gone. Still, I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't respect her. Not for what she did, but for what she came back and chose to become. Redemption isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up, day after day, with your head down and your ego in check. We closed phase 1 of the expansion 6 weeks ahead of schedule. Our CEO congratulated the entire team in person. Rachel didn't say a word. She just smiled, and this time it felt real. And that night, as we packed up, she left something on my desk that stopped me cold. It was a simple white envelope, no label. Inside was a printed document, my original proposal, the one she stole. Highlighted in yellow were the parts she'd lifted word for word. At the top, she'd handwritten a note. I kept it. I never forgot. I was wrong. This was always yours. No signature, just that. I sat there long after the building emptied. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It hadn't been for a while. This question mark. This was closure, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet acknowledgement of a line she'd crossed and a weight we could both finally put down. I slipped the letter into my drawer, not to hold on to it, just to remember that growth can come from anywhere, even broken places. I thought that was the end. But 6 months later, I got an unexpected email that would change everything again. The email was from Rachel. Subject: thank you. Inside she wrote, I just got an offer to lead strategy at a startup. I used our expansion work as my portfolio. I never would have had that chance if you hadn't given me another shot. I won't waste it. And with that, she was gone again. No drama, no need for a goodbye lunch or a LinkedIn post. Just a thank you. I closed my laptop and looked around the office I once dreamed of. The office she tried to keep me from ever reaching. Funny how things work out. Sometimes success doesn't come from fighting back harder. It comes from rising higher, from outlasting the noise, documenting the truth, holding your head up while others scheme in the shadows. I didn't beat Rachel. I outgrew her. And that was the greatest revenge of all.